Okay, let's start. This is one of my funnest topics. Last week we talked about 1 Peter 3:15. We said that there was a word called apologia, or apologetics, right? We use the word apologetics. Let me tell you where it comes from. It comes from 1 Peter 3:15 that says, always be prepared to give an apologia to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect. And that word apologia really means to argue or to defend or to explain, right? So that's where we get the idea of apologetics. Now, apologetics, you have to understand there's a difference between theology and apologetics. Theology, any religion or myth can have a consistent theology. Lord of the Rings, how many people have read Lord of the Rings or watched it, right? They have a consistent theology. It's pretty good. J.R. Tolkien did a very good job on Lord of the Rings. But it makes no sense to argue theology. You can explain theology, but it makes no sense to argue theology unless you're arguing with another Christian who accepts theology or accepts the Bible. Okay. Even if someone's theology is spotty, that does not invalidate the religion. It could just be their misunderstanding of the religion. Example, somebody's misunderstanding about relativity does not invalidate the theory of relativity. It indicates they need to study more. But apologetics needs to be defended. If they don't know, they need to find out. No other religion has verifiable apologetics. So let me tell you the difference between apologetics and theology. Apologetics is the defense of the faith. So in the case of the Lord of the Rings, apologetics would be proof that there really is a Middle Earth. Right? So the theology of Middle Earth is great, but there is no evidence that there's a Middle Earth. So it's a fantasy. So in the same way, Christianity or any religion, you may have a good theology about it, but unless you have the apologetics for it, it could be meaningless. It doesn't mean it is meaningless. It just means that there is no evidence for it, and it probably is meaningless. Okay. Now, today's topic is who is Agent X. It's one of my favorite topics, and basically it's proving that it's more reasonable to believe that God exists without using the Bible. Why no Bible? Why is this important? Well, you can't use the Bible to prove the Bible. It's circular reasoning, right? You know, somebody says, why don't you believe the Bible? It's God's word. I'm like, and you say, well, why is it God's word? Oh, because it says it's God's word. Well, you know, I grew up in Africa, right? I was surrounded by Muslims. Right? Muslims believe the Quran is God's word. Now, and you say, why do you believe the Quran is God's word? Well, because it says it's God's word, right? Well, you don't accept the Quran. If you don't accept the Quran, then why would you accept the Bible? So the Bible has to be based on the same principles. 2, atheists don't believe the Bible is true, so you can't start there. If somebody says, I have friends who are presuppositionists, and presuppositionist is actually a great way of arguing if you're talking with an intellectual. But if you're talking with someone who's just run-of-the-mill, they're not going to be, the presuppositionalism is not going to work. So you've got to start with facts and logic that they understand, that they accept. So if you say the Bible says this, atheist says, I don't care. 2, so imagine the Bhagavad Gita, right? Being an Indian, I've read the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, imagine somebody came to you and said, hey, Bhagavad Gita says you will reincarnate, right? It says the man puts up the old clothing and puts on the new clothing, right? Do you accept the Bhagavad Gita as a Christian? As a Hindu, you might, but as a Christian, you don't. So why would you not accept? If you're going to say that all you need is a holy book, then you should accept the Bhagavad Gita just as much as you accept the Bible. But they don't accept the Bible, we don't accept the Bhagavad Gita. Why? Because you have to give them a basis for it. So we don't start with the Bible. Okay. I also like to talk, and this is all the precursor to it, because I got to set it up here. We don't know is not a valid alternative theory. I've gone through this whole presentation, and my atheist friend sat me down. I'm an engineer, right? So I'm surrounded by atheists, and they're all at work. And my atheist friend sat me down and says, well, you know, that's really nice, Neil, but we don't really know. So I'm like, what do you mean we don't really know? I just gave you an argument. What do you mean we don't really know? Well, imagine you're in a court. The prosecution says the murderer was identified as the defendant. Witnesses say the murderer had blue eyes, dark hair, and a scar across his face. The defendant had a motive, an opportunity, and we found the still smoking gun in his car. Then the defense stands up and says, well, we can't conclude that, Your Honor. Maybe aliens did it. That's not a valid theory, right? You can't just say we just don't know. You have to give an alternative valid theory, and aliens did it is not a valid theory. Now, if there were aliens running around, sure, right? As my son likes to say, well, Dad, you're an alien. Yes, I am. Where is my son, by the way? Alistair, come on in here. Oh, there you are. Thank you. Okay, so you have to refute the existing data and show why it's not valid or is insufficient evidence, not complain we don't know. Okay. So the case has to be taken in entirety. Any single point may not be sufficient and may have alternative explanations. Example, somebody threw the gun in his car. Other people have blue eyes. The victim had other enemies. This is all possible. But when you add them all up, blue eyes, scars, motive, opportunity, gun, then the entire case has explanatory power, and any jury in the world would find it reasonable evidence to convict. Right? Make sense? Good. Okay. Now, today, I should warn you, today's talk will be technical. If you're not in junior high, you will have a lot of trouble with this talk. If you're in junior high, be prepared to explain this to your parents. I'm serious. I've had parents go, I had no idea what you're talking about, and their son like, Mom, and explained it to them. Okay. You'll hear a few concepts that may dazzle your mind, but if you get lost, sync up with me at each step's conclusion. So as I go through this, I will say, here's a fact and here's a conclusion. You may not necessarily follow the connection today because we're going to go through it pretty fast, but as long as you understand that conclusion came from that connection, then we can move forward from that, and then you can come back and look at that, right? But I don't want you to get lost, like, oh, I lost the first point, and then you lose everything else. So if you lose the first point, just say, okay, I'll come back and look at that, and we have resources that you can lead you through it, okay? So, okay, now let's ask you this question. If the Bible is true, today I am not going to use the Bible. In fact, this week and next week, I am not going to use the Bible. The only time I will use the Bible is if I want to refer and see if it's correct. But I will not use the Bible to make my case, okay? Because atheists don't accept the Bible. And this is the case that I presented to atheists. So, but if the Bible is true, and I like this to start off, if the Bible is true, what is the greatest miracle ever? Interactive portion of the talk. What do you think? No, not my daughter. She knows the answer. Yes? Jesus rising from the dead. Anyone else? Right here. God creating the world. Actually, God creating the universe, right? The first verse of the Bible. The creation story is in Genesis 1. If this is true, then every other miracle in the Bible is plausible and possible and probable. So, because imagine, if God can create matter and energy and time out of nothing, then he can bring somebody to life easily, right? If he can create life, then he can bring somebody back to life, right? So it's kind of funny. I was at a conference, and this topic came up. One of the speakers, Frank Turek, good friend of mine, he actually spoke here. He said, oh yeah, the resurrection was a puny miracle. Right? And there were like two of these experts on the resurrection. Lee Strobel was there and Gary Habermas was there, right? They're like, all their books are on the resurrection. And so the guy who was running the MC said, so Gary and Lee, how does it feel to be spending your life on a puny miracle? So, okay, next question. Can the supernatural happen? Is there a supernatural? And this is all about Christianity. The Bible is full of supernatural miracles, right? And it's very important. If you don't believe the supernatural can happen, you'll never believe any of the Bible's claims, especially not the resurrection. Right? So, but after the series, you will not be able to say there is no supernatural and be scientifically correct. In fact, after next week, you will not be able to say there is no supernatural because I am going to use science to prove to you that the most reasonable answer to what we have is the supernatural. Okay, so what will we cover today? We will cover this. Where did the universe come from? And two, what can we derive about the first cause of the universe, the cause of the universe from science? Okay, now, here's something very important. Logic 101, there are only two ways to refute an argument. Okay, and this is great. You should remember this, kids, if you're ever arguing with your parents. Only two ways to refute an argument. One, you have to prove the facts are wrong or incomplete, or the logic is wrong or faulty. Right? There's only two ways. So in other words, somebody says this and this is why I believe it, and then somebody says, well, you're an idiot. Well, that doesn't disprove your argument. Okay, then you say, well, maybe I am an idiot, but you haven't disproved my argument. Right? If somebody says, well, no, you're going to make money on this, that's why you're saying that. No, I created, you have to show my facts are wrong or my logic is wrong, not that my motive is bad. Right? So there are only two ways to disprove an argument. Facts have to be wrong or incomplete, or the logic is wrong. And this is very simple, and you got to do that. Okay. Now, we don't want to find 100% proof. Is this hanging off? I feel it is. Well, it is hanging off. Thank you. That's my son. Does it look funny? Kind of. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see if I can fix it. Is that better? Hopefully it'll stay. Okay. So the other thing is we don't need 100% proof. Why don't we need 100% proof for anything? Because there's something that science can't prove. Can you think of things that science can't prove? Science can't prove that you're actually sitting here right now and not somewhere in the matrix thinking that you're sitting here right now. You can't prove that. Science cannot prove that you weren't created 5 seconds ago with the impression of memories and the age. It can't prove that. But it's not reasonable to think that. So while we can't prove something 100%, we have to think, is it most reasonable? Is it the most reasonable answer? So we are going to find the most reasonable answer to the question. Right? And there are lots of other things science can't prove. Science cannot prove the scientific method. Right? You know, if somebody says, well, science proves everything. Well, does it prove the scientific method? No. Philosophy assumes the scientific method is true, so you have to have a philosophy of science. I was once talking to a person, he says, oh, I don't need any of that philosophy. I'm like, now you're doing philosophy. I mean, to say I don't need philosophy is you're arguing a philosophical point, aren't you, right? So, anyway, today we're going to talk about other universes. Now, when I say other universes, and this is for the parents, kids know exactly where I'm going with this, so I don't worry about that. But parents, when I talk about other universes, there's the Earth. The Earth is in the solar system. The solar system is in what? Milky Way galaxy. Do you know what the word galaxy means, by the way? Galaxy means milk. Yeah. Galactic means milk. So the Milky Way milk is where we live, right? That's where because the Milky Way, right? So we call all our other galaxies after our galaxy, the Milky Way, right? It's like my mother tongue is Malayalam. I don't speak it, but it means our language. What do you speak? Our language. And the word for that is Malayalam, right? Okay. So the solar system is in the Milky Way galaxy. What is the Milky Way galaxy in? I know. Come on, kids. You know the answer to this. The universe. No, not yet. There's something in between that. The local group. The local group is in the local supercluster. The local supercluster is in the universe, right? Now, when I talk about other universes, I'm not talking about any of these things here. I'm talking about other universes. Other universes, where are they? Well, they're not part of our universe. They came into being separately and independently. They don't intersect, interact, or interfere with our universe. They're out there somewhere. Out there somewhere. Never mind. Okay. That's actually a song about our sky, so never mind. Anyway, so there are 4 major points we're going to cover today. As I said, we're going to go pretty fast. I will try and slow down because we actually have 2 weeks to cover what I usually do in 1 week. So the first point is the universe is not eternal. So 80 years ago, now it's actually 85 years ago, atheists, those are people who don't believe in God, said everything that begins to exist, everything that has a beginning has a cause. And anything that existed forever needs no cause, okay? Now, let's think about this. This should be self-evident. Why? Because if something has existed forever, then there was no point at which it did not exist, right? So there's nothing that precedes it. There's nothing that comes before it. Therefore, nothing could have caused it, because to cause something, you have to precede it causally, not casually, but causally, that's in cause, or temporally, in time. Make sense? Right? So, scientists and philosophers agree that anything that existed forever logically needs no cause. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't have a cause, but it logically needs no cause. It could have an atemporal simultaneous cause. 2 things happen simultaneously, right? But it logically needs no cause, and you can live without that. So they said, everything which has a beginning has a cause, and anything that exists forever needs no cause. And then they would say the universe had no beginning and existed forever. Right? Because 80 years ago, they thought the universe existed forever. And therefore, the universe what? Needs no cause. Now, at the same time, the theists, that's the people who believe in God, said, everything that has a beginning has a cause, and anything that existed forever needs no cause. This is identical to what the atheists said. We all agree on that point, right? But when they came to the second point, the universe had no beginning. Did atheists say that? No. The atheists, did the theists say that? No, the theists said what? The universe what? Had a beginning. But they said God had no beginning and existed forever. So now, if God had no beginning and existed forever, what is the third point? Therefore what? God needs no cause. So far, so good. This is called the cosmological argument. Right? Now, it's very important you don't get confused with the cosmological argument with the cosmotological argument. The cosmotological argument is very easy to spot because it goes like this. Everyone who needs a hairdresser has hair, and anyone that has no hair needs no hairdresser. The second premise of the cosmotological argument is Gandhi has no hair. So what is the conclusion? What's the third conclusion of the cosmotology? Is what? Gandhi needs no hairdresser, okay? So that's it. Now, never get these two confused, because if you get those confused, it's actually quite embarrassing. So back to the cosmological argument. The cosmological argument, everything which has a beginning has a cause, and anything that exists forever needs no cause. And the atheist said the universe had no beginning and exists forever, therefore the universe needs no cause, until one day this guy named Hubble. There's Hubble. Hubble was looking through the Hooker telescope. You always wonder, why did Hubble's parents name him after a telescope? That's a joke for you, yeah. They didn't, thank you. So here's Hubble looking through the Hooker telescope, which happened to be actually in LA, which is very interesting because LA now, you could never have a telescope in LA. You won't be able to see anything, so much light. But back then, in the 30s or so, was it 30s? That might be the 1920s or something. Yeah, Einstein's there, so it had to be the 30s, yeah. So, so there's Hubble looking through it, and he noticed something very interesting. He noticed that the galaxies that were further away were redder than the galaxies that were closer. And so that's very interesting. Am I looking in the wrong place? So he looked on the other side of the universe, on the other side of the Earth, and he noticed the same thing. And everywhere he looked, he noticed that any galaxy that was further away was redder than the galaxy that was closer. Now you're asking me, how did they know what color the galaxy should be? They'd done some research and they figured out what colors the galaxy should be in general, but he noticed that here's a galaxy that should be this color, and it was redder. So he was really puzzled, and then finally he figured out what he was seeing. He was seeing the Doppler shift. So the Doppler shift is something that we have discovered. Now here's the Doppler shift in cars, right? Let's say you're standing by the side of a freeway, and a car is coming towards you, right? The car is going to make this sort of sound. It's going, right? Now, is the car changing its sound? No, what's happening? As each wave hits you, the waves, as the car comes towards you, each subsequent wave is closer than the other one, so the pitch goes up because the wavelength is shorter. As the car goes away from you, each subsequent wavelength is further from the other one, and the pitch what? Goes down. That's the Doppler shift. So what Hubble realized is that he was seeing the Doppler shift, but not in cars, but in stars. He realized that the galaxies were actually moving away from us because we were seeing a red shift, which is the lower end of the frequency. Now, if we'd seen a blue shift, what does that mean? Run away, because the galaxy is coming towards you, right? Now, of course, it turns out there are a few galaxies coming towards us. In fact, Andromeda is coming towards us, and it's going to merge with us and suck us all up and destroy us, but that's only 500 million years away. My daughter, when she was 4, heard this talk and was quite worried about it, until I assured her that she wouldn't be around, and I wouldn't be around at that time, so she was fine with that. Anyway, but what they realized is that the galaxies are all moving away from us. But not moving away at the speed of sound, they're moving away from the speed of light. Incredibly fast. So their conclusion is, the universe is what? Expanding. But if the universe is expanding, then what? Then it's expanding from something or from somewhere. And it can't be infinitely old, or it would have finished expanding eons ago, and we'd see nothing but fuzzy light out there. Imagine that it's been expanding for eternity. And we look out there, every single galaxy will be far away from us. We just see some fuzzy gray light as the light all merged and mingled. So they said, you know what, this is very interesting. We can calculate backwards. We kind of know the speed these galaxies are going. Let's try and figure out the calculations. And let's calculate backwards and say when they were together and how they expanded. And so they said calculations found show that the universe, light, and matter, and everything suddenly came to being with a big bang about 13.7 billion years ago, which just reminds me that we do have audio in this. We do have audio in this. Do you have audio? Can we check the audio? But we have it coming through HDMI, right? Oh, okay. Okay, so we do need audio at some point. Yeah, I'll make the sound effects. You have a cable? Yeah, we have. If you can get a. I have a long cable here. So. What? Oh, thank you. Yeah, perfect. Sorry, don't change your channel. Don't leave that right there. Now I got to switch back from HDMI though, right? So. Take the time to clean this up. I know it's. You're not supposed to be opining right there. Okay, you want to try it? Let's go back, see if it, oh, I got to select it here, hang on. Okay, go back. What happened? Alistair, shh. Now my mouse isn't working. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's see if this works. Let's see. Nope. You have nothing? You should be getting audio. Yeah. Is it selected? You got. It's not. Yeah, it's not. Okay, we'll have to figure it out for next time. Okay, we have a great video. We'll have to skip it, but let's keep going. We don't want to take too long doing that. I always forget about audio.
Isn't there subtitles on the video though?
Yeah, but.
I'll do the second.
Okay, so yeah, no, the Big Bang. This is the minor one. It's the next one that's actually talking on it. Okay, so. No, don't worry. Fine.
I think it connected.
No, I don't know. Oh.
Are you hearing it all?
No, I don't think it is.
Yes, Dad.
Yeah, because that's dead, right? Yeah, I don't think it did. Yeah. Okay. But it has done that before. I've been trying to figure out why did it not work? Huh? No, it's fine. Okay, we'll figure it out. We'll do it for next week. Okay, so the beginning. So at the point of the Big Bang, three things happen, or one thing happens. matter, time, and energy all begin to exist. Now, there really is nothing like space and time. There's only a single thing called space-time, right? So matter, time, and energy all begin to exist. What's important about this is that you can't have matter without time, you can't have time without energy, and you can't have energy without space. They're all tied together. If you take one, if you just look at Einstein's equation, you'll say just take one, set one to zero, and everything falls apart. It goes to infinity or it goes to zero. So you can't have one without the other. They're all tied together. They all coexist. They came into being at the same time. Now, what does this mean? Well, this means that we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. One, everything which has a beginning has a cause, and anything that existed forever needs no cause, right? The universe had no, oops. What? That's not true anymore. The universe had a beginning, has not existed forever. Therefore, the new universe needs what? A cause. So atheists at this point were like, oh, well, that's not good. Then they came up with this idea. Well, maybe the universe created itself. But if something, now here's the problem though. Can something do something before it exists? Can a universe create itself? No. Everybody knows that, but for you to postulate that something created itself is absolute nonsense. So they said, okay, well that doesn't work, because that is philosophically absurd. And if things create itself, what are the consequences of things creating itself? Why do science? Oh, why did that happen? Oh, it just created itself. Why is there lightning? Oh, it just created itself. Why do viruses come? Oh, they just created themselves. Right? I mean, why do anything? Why did that man die with a bullet in his heart? Oh, the bullet just appeared out of nowhere and shot him. You can't do science with this philosophy, right? So they said, okay, yeah, that's not going to work. We say, okay. They said, well, okay, so we got to back up. And they said, well, so what? So what? We grant you that the universe had a beginning, but what gave rise to the universe had no beginning. Hyperspace, or some unknown subatomic quantum agent that existed forever with a cause, that created the singularity. That existed forever agent is some unknown object. So what they're going to say is, look, the universe didn't exist. We're just going to push the problem back. Some unknown thing created the universe, and that, by the way, is not God. So atheists say some agent created the universe. My atheist friends don't like the word God, and in science, whenever you don't know something, you call it X. So we'll call this cause agent X. Agent X created and caused the universe. So today we're going to be detectives. We're going to put on a detective hat, and we're going to find out who is agent X. Or what? Yeah, to be fair. I used to have just who, and somebody came out and says, well, that's kind of biased, don't you think? Or presuming that it's a who. I said, okay, sorry, I'll put all of it in there. Now, years ago, there was a guy who blew up a building, a federal building in Oklahoma. And they went through all the debris in the explosion, and they looked through it, and they found a piece of a truck. And they figured out that what kind of truck it was. And then they checked all the rental agencies, and they found which rental agency had rented the truck. And then they found the person who had rented the truck. And they caught the guy, right? So they went through all, they were looking at the debris. And then, in fact, nowadays, if you try exploding something, in dynamite, they have tracers. They can actually trace where that dynamite was purchased from. Okay? So we want to be detectives. We want to figure out who this agent X is. And whenever you're doing this detective thing, you're first going to write things like, Agent X had red hair, had brown eyes, was very beautiful. Sorry, no, that's my wife. Okay, never mind. But we're just going to write all these things down, right? Okay, so we're going to write down. What are the two things that we know about Agent X? Well, one, it's powerful enough to create a universe, right? So we write that down. What else do we know about Agent X? Well, Agent X exists forever without a cause. Right? So those two things we know. Great. So we've started. But that still doesn't tell us who it is, right? It could be a quantum subatomic particle, whatever. Okay, so let's do some math here. I know, don't groan. Math is actually fun. let's talk about infinity. The symbol for infinity is that, right? So let's subtract with infinity. Infinity minus 1 is what? Great. You got us all get A's. Infinity minus 1 billion is what? Infinity. Great. Now notice I didn't say infinity minus infinity. Because what's wrong with that? That's undefined. We don't know what that is. Okay. So let's divide with infinity. Infinity divided by 1 is what? Infinity. Infinity divided by 1 billion is what? Infinity. All right, easiest math class ever. Now notice again, I didn't divide by infinity. Infinity divided by infinity is undefined. Okay. So now this is where I lose some of you people, and so you're going to have to bear with me. And it is a logical argument, but I may lose you because this is the toughest part of this whole class is this part here. And then next week I'm going to blow your minds away, and you're going to go, whoa, okay. But this week is just this tough part. Okay, here. The atheist claim is there's no evidence that God did this. Agent X, they say, could be something mindless like a quantum fluctuation. Right? It's just fluctuating away. Now, so if something is a mindless fluctuation, we have two options. The first option is the fluctuation is going to make only one universe, then stop. The second option is fluctuation going to make universes on a regular basis. Right? Now, why are these the only two options? Because it can't do anything else because it doesn't have a mind. It can't say, oh, I'm going to do something different. It can't say, oh, so for instance, imagine if you had a broken alarm clock, right? Kids, I know you don't know what an alarm clock is. You used to have to wind it, and anyway. Now, of course, they're all electronic. But let's say you had a broken alarm clock, and it only rings once. It's going to ring once, right? Now, it could also be so bad that it rings on a regular basis. Oh, man, it rings every day at this time. Or it could be so bad it just rings randomly. I go, oh, hey, turn that off. Well, I don't know, it just rings randomly. So it just rings any time. So these are the two things it can do. But it can't say, oh, yesterday I did this, and so now I think I'll do this instead. Right? It can't do that because it doesn't have a mind. So it's what we call mechanistic. Okay? Mechanistic means it doesn't have a mind. It's mechanical. Okay, so if we have let's look at option 1. So here is the universal causality line, okay? So eternally passes way back there or somewhere off screen. If something with no free will and no mind, like a mechanistic fluctuation, was going to existed for all infinity outside of time and was going to create one universe, okay? Just one universe. When would it have created that universe? Let's say in non-time causality, and we have to use time because we can't think of this outside time, but it was going to take 1 billion somethings before it occurred. How long ago is 1 billion minus infinity minus 1 billion? Infinity. So if it was going to do that 1 billion somethings ago, it would have been infinity ago. What if it was going to do it 1 trillion somethings before? Then how long ago would that be? What's infinity minus 1 trillion? Infinity, right? So it would have happened eternity ago. But here is our universe that was created 13.7 billion years ago. So this is not an answer. Whatever caused the universe could not have done a single event because it would have been infinity years ago, whatever, right? And the universe is not infinity old. Okay. The universe is not eternally old, nor is it eternally lasting. Okay. William Lane Craig puts it this way. It can be plausibly argued. But William Lane Craig, by the way, is the guy that you, whenever he debates with atheists, you feel sorry for the atheists. I mean, you really do. You're like, oh my goodness, you have no idea what you just got hit with, right? And it's really fun to watch him and listen to him. Even if you're an atheist, it's a good experience because he's very gentle, he's very kind, he's a very nice guy. So William Lane Craig says it can be plausibly argued that the cause of the universe must be a personal creator. For how else could a temporal cause, as an effect, temporal effect, that's an effect in time, arise from eternal cause? For example, if the cause of waters being frozen is the temperature being below 0 degrees, and the temperature were below 0 degrees from eternity, then any water present will be frozen from eternity. Does that make sense? So if, let's say you're out in space and everything is frozen, would the water that was out in space be only 13.7 billion years ago? No, it would be as old as the universe. So old is non-causality, so it should be older. He says, however, the only way to have an eternal cause but a temporal effect would seem to be if the cause is the personal agent who freely chooses to create an effect in time. For example, a man sitting from eternity may will to stand up. Hence, a temporal effect may arise from an eternally existing agent. So what he's saying is that, look, if something is going to happen that's not eternally old, it has to be something with a mind. Right? Now, you go, wait a minute. I can think of a different option. Well, yeah, that's option 2. By the way, what about collapsing and expanding universes? Well, one, if our universe kept collapsing and expanding after each cycle, residual energy would be left over. We'd be able to measure it, but we don't see any residual energy. So scientific evidence is against this. Now, I know that half of you here are thinking, Neil, but what about loop quantum cosmology? I know. I'll deal with that next. Okay, give me a bit of break here. Give me a break here. Okay, so item 1 is not where possible, so let's look at item 2. The fluctuation is going to make universes on a regular basis. Okay. Let's look at this again. So here's our universal causality line. Eternity passes back there, right? So if something with no free will and no mind, like a mechanistic quantum fluctuation, was going to create something in some non-time, and it was existed for all infinity outside of time, and was going to create more than one universe, how many universes would it have created by now? Well, let's say it took 1 billion years to create one universe. Infinity minus 1 billion is? Divided by 1 billion is? Infinity. Let's say it took 100 trillion years to make a universe. Infinity, thank you. What if the first universe was infinity, was 1 billion years, the second one was 10 billion years, the next one was 100 trillion years, how many universes would there be? Infinity. There would be infinite universes. But are there infinite universes? By the way, the concept of infinite universes covers loop quantum cosmology, so there you go. It covers atemporal causality. Atemporal means out of time causality. Each of the infinite universes are created the same non-time, 13.5 billion years ago. It covers bud, fractal, spontaneously generated, randomly generated, quantum, sequential universes, and it covers diminishingly smaller universes, where one universe causes another universe, causes another universe, causes another universe. Right? It goes through all that, right? So, but are there multiple infinite universes? By the way, you call this a multiverse. I call it an infiniverse, because you have to have infinite universes. Multiverses, I actually think there are multiverses out there. But are there infinite multiverses out there? Here's the problem. There's no evidence for this. You can't see, touch, taste, smell, hear, calculate, or measure any of the effects of these universes. I was at a debate once with a friend of mine. He was about 19 years old at the time, and calls me up and says, "Hey, I'm having a debate with my friend. We've got this place. We're going to have the debate. Send the word out." So I send it out on my mailing list, and we have about 50, 60 people sign up. And then he calls me 2 days before the debate. He goes, "Oh, my friend didn't realize there were so many people coming, so he backed out." I said, "Oh." He said, "Do you know any atheists?" I said, "I know a lot of atheists, but none of them would debate you because they're just, they're just atheists. They're not like hardcore. I got to debate someone. They're just like, I'm just an atheist, right?" I said, "But there is a group here called the Silicon Valley Atheists." He said, "Oh yeah, I'll call him." So he calls him. He calls me back. He said, "Oh, I got someone." I'm like, "Oh, who'd you get?" I'm thinking some student, right? He goes, "Oh, I got the president." I'm like, "Dude, you're 19. The president's like 50. He's been doing this for years." He goes, "I got this. Don't worry about it." And he did. He destroys the guy in the debate. And halfway through the debate, at the end of the debate, right, there's a Q&A, and somebody comes up because they'd read some of the stuff I'd put out. He said, "And I have a question for you. It seems that the only way your argument will survive is if there are infinite universes. Can you prove they're there?" He goes, "Yes, they are there. You have to believe in them. They are there." And everybody's like, "What?" Here's the problem. Isn't this the complaint the atheists have about God? You can't see him, you can't touch him, you can't calculate him, you can't feel. Now, we think we can see his effects, but that's what they claim, right? So why the sudden change in standards? Well, yeah, I'll believe in infinite universes, but I won't believe in God, and I can't see those infinite universes. And it has to be infinite. It can't be just one or two. As I said, I actually believe there might be multiverses, but it has to. Why the sudden change in standards? This is blind faith, isn't it? And we believe what? In no blind faith. I always have to throw that in. Now, so what are the consequences of infinite universes? I always like this. If there are infinite universes, there are going to be some consequences. Right? Well, if there's infinite universes, then there are almost infinite yous out there watching this same presentation with me, and there will be almost infinite yous over and over and over again. That means you are all over the place. Millions and billions and trillions of you. Now, yes, in some universes there aren't you, in some universes there are you. I'll tell you a funny story about this. So I had an atheist friend, we were arguing with him. He says, hey, I'm willing to see your argument. So we go, he said, we will have lunch. I said, okay, so we go out to lunch. We're going to go out to lunch. And he called me like 15 minutes before we started. He goes, hey, I have to babysit my kids. Can you come to my house? I said, yeah, sure, I'll come in. And that's his picture. I'm not going to tell his name. He's a nice guy. He's a hardcore atheist, right? So I make the slide for him and do this presentation. And I go to his house, and I get there, and his son is 13, right? I'm like, okay. So I said, does he want to watch? He goes, yeah, he'll enjoy this. So halfway through the presentation, his son starts arguing with his dad against him. Says, no, Dad, what he's trying to say is this, right? And then like 2 years later, I keep it in because it's kind of funny. I keep it in. 2 years later, I'm doing a presentation to a bunch of high school kids, and a kid goes, I know that guy. And then he says, you're the guy. I'm like, what? He goes, that's my friend's dad, and he thinks you're cool. So I'm like, okay. So I don't know if he ever became a Christian, but it was kind of fun. It's like, anyway, fun story. Anyway, so here's the problem. If there are infinite universes, there's a universe where wherever you toss a coin, it always comes up heads, even if you do it 1 billion times in a row. There's a universe where you're the one giving the presentation, and I'm sitting down listening. Right? Think about it. Every single possible occurrence has happened. Now, I told my friend, I don't think you believe in infinite universes. He goes, sure I do. I said, no, you don't. So let's say we're playing poker. I don't play poker, but let's say we're playing poker. Suddenly you realize I got 10 royal flushes in a row. When you jump up and shout you're cheating, I say not at all. We're just in that one universe where I just always happen to get a royal flush. Now, would you buy that? Would you think it's reasonable when you jump across the table, grab me by the neck, and say, give me my money back, you dirt and rotten cheater? If you don't think that's reasonable, why do you think this is reasonable? Now, the sad thing is, so in my book, Agent X, a friend of mine at work helped me write it, and he's a hardcore atheist. I said, hey, do you want to edit it? He says, yeah, I'll be happy to read it. He reads through the whole thing. I said, at the end of it, I said, so let me ask you this. You've read the book. You helped me edit it. You corrected a bunch of things. You gave me a few arguments that I hadn't covered. What do you think? He said, well, I'd rather believe in infinite universes. I'm like, you can't prove them. He goes, yeah, that's just my preference. So, good friend, nice guy, but that's where you wanted to be. Okay, so both of these options are not going to work, right? Fluctuation, so neither of these things. You won't have infinite universe, you don't have one infinite infinitely old. So what does that mean? That means the first cause must be non-mechanistic. It must have what? A free will. It should be able to say, I want to do this when I want to do that, right? Now, this is the video that we're not going to watch because I'm going to save it till until we have audio. Okay, here we go. So number 3 on our list, we'll show it next week after we have audio. Number 3 on our list, Agent X exists forever without cause. Sorry, powerful enough to carry the universe exists forever without cause. And number 3 is a non-mechanistic agent. So we're racking these up. Okay, at this point I want to cover something. This is very important. Does the Big Bang contradict Genesis? Well, it turns out it doesn't. And even atheists think so, right? In fact, here are 3 Nobel Prize-winning atheists. 1, Arno Penzias. The best data we have concerning the Big Bang are exactly what I would have predicted had I had nothing to go on but the 5 books of Moses, the Psalms, and the Bible as a whole. Robert Wilson. Certainly there was something that set it all off. I can't think of a better theory of the origin of the universe to match Genesis. And George Smoot. There is no doubt that a parallel exists between the Big Bang as an event and the Christian notion of creation from nothing. Okay, so then people say, are we changing our interpretation of the Bible to fit science? Well, first of all, not really. Actually, science is changing with the Bible. Irenaeus in the 1st century, Origen in the 3rd, Basil in the 4th, and Aquinas in the 13th century, and others all said that the word yom in Genesis could literally be translated as eon and not day. Okay, so we'll have to grant them that. 2, science didn't know about the Big Bang theory or the age of the Earth until the 20th century. It thought the Earth was past eternal and infinitely old. Okay, secondly, so science finally came around to us. Okay, some notes, and this is very important you understand this. The Big Bang theory is not a good name. The big controlled explosion would be more accurate. And I'll show you that. 2, remember the Big Bang is not equal to evolution. Okay? You can The Big Bang points us to the Bible. Evolution does not. The Bible clearly says man was created specifically. It does not say that God used evolution to bring man in. And so it's very difficult to say the Big Bang matches, evolution works with the Bible, but the Big Bang actually describes the Bible. The Big Bang describes something identical to the Big Bang, but the Big Bang does not say evolution happened. They're two separate issues. Evolution is a theory in crisis. Though there's some pushback, the Big Bang is not. Evolution is in serious trouble today. We had James Tour here. How many people saw him speak here? He is just an amazing speaker. He's got like 300, 400 patents or more, and he is a microbiologist, and he goes through the whole thing about how there is no way that evolution could have happened. If you ever listen to him, James Tour, Dr. James Tour, just amazing, a Jew who became a Christian. Okay, now, so remember when you're witnessing to the atheists, first of all, remember, time dilation could explain that 13.7 billion years ago. This is a billion years. This is not something we need to argue about. Let me explain time dilation. The outer edge of the universe is expanding close to the speed of light, remember? Right? So, we have something called time dilation. If you're in the center of the earth and you're looking out, you're going to get time dilation on the outside. If you're on the outside looking in, you're going to get time dilation. Anything that's relative to you that's moving differently, you're going to have time dilation. If you take the time interval of about 6,200 years is what people claim the Bible is, and you have the observable velocity is close to the speed of light, you end up with 13.5 billion years. Okay, now is this the answer? I don't know, I'm not sure, but it really isn't something I argue with an atheist to. So, second, don't get hung up on the 6 days versus 6 eons. That's an in-family argument. Christians can argue about that all day. If you're talking to an atheist, don't get into argument. You're just going to lose them, and then that'll be the end of the conversation. 2, don't get stuck with trying to disprove evolution. It's too much work. Okay, I used to do evolution arguments all the time, and things change so fast in evolution, and even faster now, right? I'd write one thing, and then somebody say, well, that's not right anymore. I'm like, oh, and I'd have to go spend a month learning what was right. Now, I just couldn't keep up with it, so because that was not my field. I was an engineer. Okay, don't start trying to prove the Bible is accurate. Save that for next, okay? If you start saying the Bible is accurate, they're like, if they don't believe in God, why do they care if the Bible is accurate? Okay, so you got a book that's accurate, but it describes things that didn't happen, right? Who cares, right? So you do that next, and we'll talk about the Bible being accurate in the next session. But first you want to prove God exists. You start at the basis, because if God exists, then the Bible means something, if the Bible is His Word of God, is the Word of God. 2, you first want to prove God exists, and it's easy enough to use the data the atheist already accepts to do that. Throughout this time, you've noticed I've not used the Bible in any of these discussions, arguments. Okay. Second point, it is fine-tuned. And we'll end with this point today. And we'll continue next week. So, besides having a beginning, there are 3 other factors we notice. Fine-tuned. The Big Bang is so fine-tuned that even slight variations would cause instability or collapse or destroy the universe or not allow life. Okay? Now let me explain this. It turns out there's a bunch of fine-tuning constants in the universe. For instance, if the ratio of electrons to protons had changed by 1 in 10 to the minus 37, that means there was that many more protons or that many more electrons compared to protons, then, or that many less electrons, then no stars or planets would form, right? If the ratio of electromagnetic force to gravity had changed by 10 to the minus 40, stars would burn up too fast, and there would be no heavy elements. If it changed in 1 in 10 to the minus 40, less or more. Expansion rate of this universe, if it had been faster or slower by 10 to the minus 55, no galaxies would form. So it was like right on the precipice, right? Mass of the universe, if it had changed in 10 to the minus 59, stars would burn up too rapidly for life, or you'd have insufficient helium and no heavy elements, right? Now you go, well, wow, Neil, that's really nice. What does that all mean? So I decided to give you an example. Here's the example I use. Imagine using a recipe to bake a cake. And the recipe used 286 billion pounds of sugar. That's equivalent to all the grains of sand on 100 million Earths. But it was so sensitive that if you added 1 more grain of sugar, then that exact amount, the whole cake would fall flat or explode or kill anyone who ate it. Okay? Now you see the picture. 1 grain of sand in 100 billion Earths, right? So, now, fine-tuning of the physical constant of the universe. The ratio of electrons and protons, no stars or planets would form. That is 1 grain of sand in 100 million Earths. The ratio of electromagnetic force to gravity, stars bend up too fast, no heavy elements. That is 10 to the minus 40. That is 1 grain of sand in 100 billion Earths. Expansion rate of the universe, no galaxies were formed. That's 1 grain of sand in 10 trillion Earths. The mass of the universe, 10 to the minus 59, is 1 grain of sand in 100,000 trillion Earths. What does that tell us about the person who created the universe? 1, more powerful enough to create the universe, exists forever without cause. 3, non-mechanistic agent. And number 4, knowledgeable enough to create a fine-tuned universe. That's why I said Big Bang is a bad name. A finely controlled explosion would be more correct. And so next week, we're going to talk about the 10 dimensions, how something out there wants us to discover him, scientific explanation for angels and demons, proof of the supernatural, walking through walls, what's it like to die, and Hamlet reading Shakespeare. And you're like, what? Okay. And we don't have time for a game, even though I had a game planned. We will do that next week because we want to get the games in there. So what we want to do first, before we do Q&A, we'll do a quick Q&A because we're going to do 15 minutes because we started 15 minutes late. We're going to end 15 minutes later. What I want to know is I want to know the team names because this is important. Yes?
Teams keep switching because people don't come regularly.
I know, but you gather and maybe there's one main person. So yeah, that is an issue. But so this table, you have a team name? Are you the same people from last week? Some? Okay. Did you guys have a team name? Huh? The Starry Nights. What an appropriate name. Okay. Over there, you guys are brand new, right? You're brand new. You guys can come up with a team name. This table right here, high school, Infinity. How did you, you just came up with it, or is it, oh, very good, okay. Junior high table. Rational Faith. Oh, where did you hear that one before? Okay, over there. Are you guys new or what? New. All new? Okay. This table. The high school table. You're coming up with it. That's a funny name. Are you guys new or are you an existing table? You're an existing table. Team 1. And you're going to stay with Team 1. Great. How about back there? Existing or new? Do you want to come up with a team name? Okay. How about back there? I know you guys have been here. Agent X. Oh, I like that. Okay. Back there. You guys were here last week. Huh? Yeah. All of you guys need to email me your names so we have it. We can actually give you the points. And we're going to, you guys have a team? You have a team name? The back table? This, you guys are together?
What is it?
Just that one. Alpha Omega. How about right there? Okay. Did we get everybody?
Hang on, I'm calculating it.
No. So what I want you guys to do is, I know it's, but I really want to get your team names and your scores. And the team, you guys won last week, right? Yeah, I gave you the wrong score. You guys actually had 16,000, not 14,000. So just remember that. Send it to me in an email. Or something. It's expanding. The scores are expanding. Okay. Let's do Q&A for a few minutes. We've got 10 minutes for Q&A. I really want to do some Q&A because somebody asked me a really great question by email, and I wanted to answer it. And I totally forgot the question. Robin, what was the question again? Where did Robin go? Is she around? She might be outside. Okay. But let's go to another question then. Oh, Robin, do you remember the question? It was about faith, right? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Okay, that's okay. So let's talk about the question. The question was, are we supposed to have faith in God? And God, Abraham was granted as he had great faith, even though he was going to the land of Ur, and the land of the, he was coming out of the land of the Chaldeans, and he had no idea where he was going. Isn't that blind faith? And I thought it was very important that we understand. It was a great question. No, because he knew God. Remember, he had an experience with God. He had met God. And later on, he actually meets God in person, which is pretty impressive. But he knew God, and he knew that God was going to take care of him. So it's like when you go to your doctor. You don't know if the medicine that he's going to give you is going to work. But you have faith in the doctor because you have past experience with the doctor. So that's the difference. So when you have faith in God, you're not having faith in whether God exists. You're having faith in his commands. And usually it relates this way. have faith in God, obey his commandments. Don't sleep around. Stay pure until you're married. Stay pure after you're married. Don't do this, don't do that, right? All these things are commandments because we know that God gave these commandments not for his sake, but for whose sake? For our sake. It's like when there's a traffic law out there, that traffic light law that says you're supposed to stop at a red light is not there because somebody didn't want you to have fun. It's there because they don't want you to die, right? Or kill somebody else. I remember when I was working here at AMD back in the 80s, there was a very cute security guard, so I'd always try to talk to her. I was not married, by the way, then, just so you know, just in case you're wondering. I was always talking to her, and one day I invited her to church, and she said, well, I don't want to go to church. I don't need all those rules and regulations that I don't want to have that burden of, on me. And I said, wait, what? I don't understand, because I was like, what? Why? She says, well, I don't want to live my life with regret because I didn't get to do something. I said, well, on the other hand, it turns out that if you do that thing, you may end up in a life of regret. I said, if you decide, I'm just not going to obey any traffic laws, I'm just going to have fun, pretty soon you won't have fun because you'll be dead. Right? Reminds you of that line in Star Wars where they're in the cantina, and he says, he doesn't like you. And Luke Skywalker says, I'm sorry. And the other guy says, well, I don't like you either. And Luke Skywalker says, I'll be careful. And the guy says, you'll be dead! And then, of course, Obi-Wan comes and goes, anyway, never mind. Okay, question. I don't say that there are. I just think there could be. There's no reason why they shouldn't be. I have a friend who has because if you think of black matter, dark matter, it's sucking everything in. Well, where's that everything going? It could be going to another universe, and that's the portal, right? So he thinks he's a physicist, and he thinks there's some relationship. So I don't want to say there aren't, but the question is, it's not a multiverse. You need to have infinite multiverses, right? Yeah, and next week when we talk about the dimensions, you'll see why that's actually a very good idea. Yeah.
So a lot of the arguments we've been talking about today seem to kind of boil down to a plausibility, right?
Yeah.
When you boil everything down, it becomes two plausible, the only plausible.
Yeah.
One is that you have a non-mechanistic source of the universe.
Yeah.
God and supernatural.
Right.
And the second is that you have a mechanistic source of infinite universe.
Yes. Or one infinitely whole universe. Yeah.
So coming down to, say, the first document, a supernatural creator of the universe, then it kind of boils down from there to, okay, our representation of the supernatural God.
Yeah. Yes. So keep going. I want you to finish your question, but I think I know where you're going.
To me, another way of representing this is kind of finding the weakest links in each argument, right? So the way we get to this is by finding the weak links of, okay, there can't be a finite number, multiverses have to be infinite.
Right.
So when we come down to the Bible, and kind of what I feel is the equating of the supernatural and God and the Bible, why is it not a weaker link to say, okay, well, instead of disproving, say, evolution and the scientifically documented and studied age of the universe, why is it not a weaker link to say maybe the Bible, i.e. man's representation and conception of how the supernatural and God work, why is that potentially not a more flawed or potentially inaccurate?
Yeah. So the question is, why are we going to give the same deference to the Bible? We're not. In fact, in week 3, we're going to look at the Bible really carefully. Because here's the deal. After I'm done with this, all I'm going to prove that there's something more reasonable to think that there's a God. But it doesn't say if it's the God of the Hindus or the God of the Mormons or the God of the Buddhists, which is not a God, or the God of the Muslims or the God of the Christians or the unknown God. In fact, we'll talk about what is it, right? And so we'll talk about it. So you're absolutely right. We've got to look at every weakness everywhere and then boil it down. And then you come up with the most reasonable. Did this person take the gun and shoot that person, or did aliens do it, or did somebody next door to him? Is there reasonable circumstances for doubt? we have to look at everything, absolutely. Yeah, and we should never say, oh, God did it, right? So we never want to jump to God. And that's why the Agent X argument starts here, but it then says, well, let's look at every single possible, and next week we're going to talk about the other possibilities too. Yeah, great question. Next. Anyone? If you're confused, yeah. If you're confused, ask your junior higher, he will explain this to you. Yes.
This is kind of more on the multiverses stuff, but if the multiverses are true, which universe did Jesus die for us?
Theological question. Theological question. No, because maybe if the multiverses are true, maybe there's a universe where people didn't sin. Then Christ didn't have to die. Right? So, but who knows, right? But again, the question about the multiverses, see, it's only the infinite verse that you have parallel universes. In the multiverse, you could have 5 or 6 universes that have nothing to do with our universe. They're not. See, if it's controlled multiverses, then this is the only one universe where you exist. The other universe, you don't exist.
And would our heaven be different from their heaven?
There are 7 definitions for heaven. This is what I live with. I have to ask these 2 kids. There are 7 definitions. It goes on for hours, and then halfway at 11:30, my wife will go, "How come you guys aren't in bed yet?" I'm like, "We're discussing theology." Well, it's too late for that, right? They have class tomorrow, so. It depends.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a longer discussion. Yeah, my daughter has a question. The other one, yes.
Would there be a universe where God decided to create something else?
If there are multiverses, yeah, it's quite possible. But again, we don't know that there are multiverses. I'm just saying it's quite possible there are multiverses. Yeah. Any other questions? Wow.
Okay.
Yes.
One of your main arguments hinges on the idea that it's impossible to have infinite multiverses.
No, it's irrational to have infinite multiverses. Yeah. Not impossible. It's certainly possible. But the evidence for the infinite universes is non-existent.
Okay.
Right? So which is the more reasonable answer then? And the concept of the infinite universes means there are infinite yous and me's. Which is okay, but it's sort of absurd. Remember, we can't prove that you're really here, but it seems like an absurd idea.
Standing up there, teaching you, sitting here is okay.
It's okay, yeah, yeah. So it is possible. There's no proof for it, and we want evidence. So what is more reasonable? Is there, a God? And then remember, this is just remember I told you this is the whole argument here. All we've done is given you the first part of the argument. Now the question is, when everything starts lining up, does it make sense? The gun, the color of the color of his hair, the motive. When you start, all these things start lining up, you go, yeah, it could be aliens, but is it reasonable? Right? So I'm not just giving you one argument. I'm going to give you 7 arguments in this thing. And then we're going to go talk about the Bible. We're going to give you a bunch of arguments there. Then we're going to talk about Christ. We're going to give a bunch of arguments there. So when you start putting everything together, and then when we get into theology, when we start tying this all together and explaining it, you're like, oh, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense. But remember, the theology is based on the apologetics, not the apologetics on the theology. Right? Great question. Anybody else? Okay. As you can see, I have a lot of fun at work when I argue with my atheist friends. And we have a lot of fun. They enjoy it. I never make somebody argue that who doesn't want to argue. In fact, I think I said this at I had an atheist friend and I said, his name was Al. I said, Al, you're such a nice guy. I hate the thought. Awesome time and this awesome topic, Lord. We pray that this will bless people and they'll be able to think and mull on it. There's a lot here. And we pray that you will keep us safe till next week. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Yes, books in the back if you want them. I think there's more food, maybe some more food. Finish it off. Thank you. Oh, it's